For me, it was a self-imposed pressure.
Was I under pressure? No.
Yeah, they're under pressure. Everyone's under pressure.
OTB AM's Pressure Rankings with Gillette.
And the big pressure.
All right. So we were kind of mentioning this at the top of the show that today is going to be another, unfortunately, seismic day for the country. The impact of what's going to happen if the country goes to level 5 is going to be huge on every walk of life, and insignificantly compared to everything else will be sport, but it is significant in some way in itself. So here are the 5 most under pressure areas of the sporting world if level 5 is implemented today. At number 5 is us. We will have to bring back out the Classic Game Club.
I love Classic Game Club. It's great.
It is great, and it is just this full belly of nostalgia that we've had from 2020. Are we starting to get a little bit hungry again? Starting to get a little bit peckish for a bit of Down versus Derry in the early 1990s, a bit of Forest versus Liverpool in the 1980s.
Maybe not. Okay. Now, Brazil played England last night on Air Sport, and I was flicking through and I was like, oh, it's from 1970. And the tackling was agricultural. It looked like a Gaelic Games match. I was like, I would certainly watch a bit of this if I wasn't accidentally forgetting about the fact that Villa are currently trouncing Liverpool at the moment. Those 7 o'clock kickoffs. What's the story? Like, at some point, somebody's going to have to set an alarm that goes off in your head that goes, hang on a second, there's a big game at 7 o'clock that you've been looking forward to all day and you've accidentally forgotten about it.
It shouldn't be a game of that magnitude. It just feels wrong on a Sunday night. You should be watching Levante against Barcelona on a Sunday night.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, I'm sure they thought that that's what they were doing when they were putting up the tomato can that is Villa for Liverpool to, like, beat in a routine 3-0, maybe 4 if one of them decides to turn it on. A Sadio Mane hat-trick in under 10 minutes, like he's already done against Villa before. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but like, you're right. I should say that the Premier League and the NFL basically are under the most pressure for us. Like, we're talking selfishly here because the NBA is about to finish up. So you've got these 2 major sports leagues that are set to go on for the foreseeable future. We basically need Ireland to be the only country in our general sphere of sports to go back to where they were. But Championship, that looks like under a massive amount of pressure. We'll get to the GAA in a moment, but in terms of our Irish sports over the next couple of weeks, it's not looking good whatsoever. At number 4, I've gone with Ireland's non-mainstream sports people. They're under huge pressure. These are the people who don't have crowds at all. These are the people who have done nothing wrong, and nobody can ever make a case that they've done anything wrong. These are the amateur athletes, the potential Olympians here, probably out killing themselves as we speak, putting themselves through unbelievable pain in some sort of morning gym session. And yet, other sports, and possibly the GAA more than any other, definitely the GAA more than any other, has probably let them down. Like, no one is parading down streets when these guys are doing their 5 a.m. gym sessions, but parading down the streets, and the scenes we've seen yesterday and the scenes we've seen over the last couple of weeks, in fairness, from a lot of the crowds around GAA games, means that these guys will have to even fight to be able to do their gym sessions, and that is the real disappointment. And they would be at number 4 in our pressure rankings. At number 3, then, we've gone for Irish football, because we all know that the years that they've had, the financial pressure that they've been under, the mere idea of people paying for Watch League of Ireland and to actually give something to the League of Ireland as it's on its knees and as it's struggling day to day, that has been a really important part of the last couple of months. That won't be an option over the next little while. That won't, games won't happen. Like you mentioned, Dundalk's European conquest, there have to be question marks about the venues of those games now over the next little while. At number 2, then, we've got Irish Rugby. Six Nations again, something that, again, when we see the news last night, that this is going to be up in the air. Pro 14 obviously goes the exact same way. How do we make this thing happen? Can this thing happen in Dublin if we're going into essentially a 4-week national lockdown?
Well, if stage 5, if they actually stick to their rules, and we know they haven't before, there's been a 2, 2.5, 2 and a bit, 2-star, 2 asterisk. Stage 5 is no sport. So just that's for clarity's sake here, that there would be nothing. We would all be back to the 5K radius of your house, and everybody working from home, only important shops open, everything closed again. That's what a full stage 5, as has been recommended, would involve. And so at that point, from a rugby perspective, and perhaps from Dundalk's perspective, Dundalk need to move to Belfast and play out of Windsor Park or somewhere, and the Irish rugby team needs to move to Belfast and play out of Ravenhill for those games, or I don't know, move to London or move to Wales. Like, probably moving to Belfast makes the most sense.
Yeah, a Pro 14 or a Six Nations bubble in Belfast might actually be the way out of this from a rugby standpoint. At number one in our pressure rankings this morning is the GAA, and the GAA is trending on Twitter this morning. Not GAA, the GAA. So you could probably guess there are a lot of questions to be asked of the organisation itself, and like there is this question about whether or not you can separate the GAA hierarchy from the GAA members. And I suppose you can't really, like if there was crowd trouble at an international football game, that country's FA would be punished. And I guess there is going to be a lot of anger over the next little while towards the GAA, considering they have been the sporting organisation that has seen the most reckless scenes at their sports matches. Yes, there are more GAA matches taking place than any other sport. Yes, there are higher stakes and a lot of county finals and all that over the last couple of weeks. But it doesn't excuse some of the scenes that we've seen over the last little while. And it does not help that, what was it, 5-6 weeks ago at this point, they called out Neffet. And as a result of calling out Neffet, you put yourself into the spotlight that you have to be squeaky clean when you make a move like that. And in all the different factions around the country, they've been anything but.
Yeah, well, they summoned Neffet to meet them and explain their thinking behind the decision that they made to continue to allow games to be played, but not to increase the number of spectators who are at the games. And you know, we've seen pictures from various games where teams are celebrating on the pitch. There's pitch invasions. There's footage doing the rounds of Blackrock celebrating with a parade, and like, you know, Mark Tross was on making the point that ultimately this is down to personal responsibility. Like, it is down to personal responsibility, and that's the point that the GAA essentially have been making from the start. It's hard, though, not to say that somebody somewhere has to take some responsibility for this at an organisational level as well. Like, come out and say you can't do this again and again. You know, because they reissued the guidelines, was it last Thursday or Friday, ahead of the weekend's county finals, urging everybody to use an abundance of caution. This is happening at the same time as what's happening in Spanish Arch and what's happening in Cork on the streets, and like, I don't know, you lose the moral high ground essentially.
Yeah, and you see games taking place in other sports. You see League of Ireland games and other sports as well, where crowds have been, I don't know, better organised at games. Like, it's hard to know what exactly is the difference here, or how there can be such a disparity between what you're seeing at GAA games and what you're seeing at other games. I accept that there is a bigger volume of GAA games, and maybe some of them are doing things right, but I just don't know. Like, did anybody kind of second guess that parade yesterday, for example? Is there a sense that, you know, we've won our county title, so things can wait for a moment, we can put this to one side for one weekend? Because that seems to be the attitude at the moment, that we can press pause on COVID just for a couple of hours for the game.
For us, we're going to get away with it. Like the Sale rugby team going drinking, and then all of a sudden 10 days later there's an outbreak. You know, like, if there are outbreaks, you know, when we all look back on how this came back, there will be a lot of, well, it was up in Dublin, or it was in parts of Kildare, and it was in those counties that went into lockdown. The rest of us didn't really need to worry about it. But actually, turns out the county borders are made up, they're fictional, and viruses don't give a shit about them. So